So, I'd love to share with you about how you learn to work with silent parts of yourself, what they are, the two different types, and the two different ways that you need to work with the different silent types of you. Now, what are parts? Every single person watching this video has parts, but we like to say that we are our name. However, we all react in different ways and we all do different things at different times. And internal family systems has become incredibly popular as a form of therapy. And what I do is I use the model, but I also use my own life experience because I have DID and I help people like you learn how parts work together in groups and also how parts work inside of you. I'm brilliant at being able to help you get those conversations going. So let's get into silent parts and how do we start communicating with them because there are two different types. So the first version of silent types of you, they are the ones that are non-verbal. Okay. And the other version of you are the ones that have had so much trauma, they're scared to speak up. So let's talk about how we work from my perspective, based on my inner me model and inner family, of how I've learned to work with non-verbal parts of myself. So I have a couple of non-verbal parts of me. All right. The first part of me is 18 months. And just so you know, when we talk about non-verbal parts, these are caused usually by some form of trauma. Now, trauma is defined as a moment in time when something was too much or something was not enough. Gabor Mate speaks a lot about trauma and how it is and how it plays out in the body. And when it came to me wanting to work with my non-verbal parts, I knew that I had an 18-month version of me inside of me. But I know at 18 months that I couldn't speak. Is that true for you in this video here? Did things happen to you when you were a child that you can't remember? For most of you, you won't remember your childhood because you've had extreme trauma, or again, it doesn't have to have been extreme. Like I say, trauma defined as too much or not enough, but it's enough to block the memory being in your mind. Maybe that resonates with you today. So, when it came to working with 18-month-old me, I want you to know that the silent part, they give you feelings. Okay, so when you've got a silent part working with you, I'll give you a perfect example here. When I knew that 18-month-old me, it needed my help, it needed me to understand what it wanted from me, I started feeling like I had a very cold bum. Okay, so I'll give you an example. I know from a memory that has happened for me that I was left alone in my cot to scream and cry for hours and hours at a time because my mum had postnatal depression and I disassociated enough to be able to see my mum had locked the door, left me in the cot in a soaking wet nappy for hours and hours. I was a very small child before my brother was born and my mum was sat outside crying. And this 18-month-old part, though, it needed my help and it needed my support, but it couldn't say, "Hey, Kel." It couldn't say, "I need to talk to you," like 9-year-old Christian can, or like 7-year-old Jez or 22-year-old Mav. Those parts of me can speak to me and can make me aware that they need my attention. But working with 18-month-old me, I knew that that part needed me because I started feeling like I had a very cold bum. I started feeling very wet and I started feeling like something wasn't right with me and I felt very alone. I felt very frightened and I felt very scared and I kept seeing the darkness. And what I want you to know is when a silent part of a non-verbal capacity, from my perspective, is trying to communicate with you, they use the external word as a mirror. So I'll say, for example, I kept seeing lots of babies and I kept meeting babies around the age of kind of like 18 months old, a year to 18 months. And I was like, this is weird. And I made a video really recently and I'll link it up here, how the mirror is your reflection of what is going on inside. So I used my external mirror and I used the fact that I kept seeing babies, I kept seeing the word silent, I kept seeing darkness, I kept seeing cots. But the biggest indication for me was I was getting stirrings in my root chakra. Okay, and I've always said this, and I said this, shared it with a client last night. But if you are feeling stirrings and you're feeling like, you are horny, so to speak, and you're not in a relationship, that is because there is stuck sexual trauma, Kundalini energy in your body. And I started feeling very kind of like, very powerful down there. And I knew that was because there was some trauma for me that happened at 18 months. But what I could also tell you is when it comes to working with a non-verbal part, they are a place in your body. So this non-verbal part of me was living in my bum, kind of like in my root area. And what I did when it came to speaking to this silent part was I would use very affirming, nurturing words, and I would put my hand, whichever is relevant, on my body, because the left side of you is feminine and the right side of you is masculine. Okay, so as I taught this client last night and I'm teaching in this video today, I want you to know that when you use your left hand, that is your nurturing capacity, feminine energy coming through. So when you're doing any healing on yourself, if you do your own Reiki or whatever, look at which way your hands are being placed. So when it came to working with this silent part, I used my left hand, which is my nurturing inner mother. And then I would use my right hand on top, which is the protective inner masculine energy, which is the father in me. And by literally putting my hands, and you can't see on this video here, but if I say to you on the left hand side, just kind of like above my leg bit, is where this 18-month-old part of me was living. And I'd love you just to think in stopping this video right here and just pop in the comments if this lands, but which part of you is really saying to you, or are you feeling anything in your body? Because the whole point of you clicking on this video is it helps you identify the non-verbal silent parts inside of you. And like I say, they live in a place in your body. Quite often they have a colour attached to them. So when we're talking about non-verbal parts, we usually see colours like baby blue or we see baby pink. Okay, and if you are looking at a lot of baby clothes and you're not expecting babies and you're not thinking about having a family, is it possible from this video today that you've got a silent part of you that had some trauma that you need to look at? And when we work with a silent non-verbal part of us, our biggest job is using reassuring language, very positive, affirming language, okay? And we constantly keep in touch with that silent part of us. That helps the silent part of us start to feel safe in our body. So that's for me how you work with the non-verbal part, because once I'd connected with 18-month-old me enough, I was able to understand that 18-month-old me, I was shown a memory where my dad had abused me as a child and also my granddad when I was 18 months old in my nappy. And I was able to what I call reframe or rework that memory. And if you do a personal session with me, I'm someone that specializes in sexual abuse healing and also how you can heal from incest if that's ever happened with your brother or your sister or a member of your family. That's what I specialize in. So once I'd done all that and I had reframed and reworked the memory, guess what? The energy in the Kundalini in my body, that started to move, and I no longer felt that I was, stirred in the root area. So for me, that's my true example of how you work with a non-verbal part of you. And again, just think to yourself here, okay, do I have a non-verbal part that is, very young, for example? Okay. Now let's move on to how do we work with silent parts of ourselves that are older. Okay, so if you experienced a huge amount of trauma like I did, okay, so like I said, I had DID and I was diagnosed in 2016 with multiple personality disorder, and I have 14 different parts. I also have what is known as the monarch mind, so I was part of government mind control programming, and my DID is a gift, if I'm honest, okay, and what I've been doing lately is working a lot with what I call my monarch memories. Okay, and they don't scare me anymore. Whenever I remember anything from Monarch and what happened and my mind control, my body doesn't react. Okay, I just go, okay, cool, that makes sense. And when we're working with a silent part of ourselves, what's really important to understand is that part of you is silent because it needs two things from you. Number one, it needs you to get silent too. Okay, it needs you to quieten the external world so you can meet that silent part. That recently happened to me, and I've got a separate video that I'm going to make around why I had to go silent to do the deepest amount of healing that I've ever done in my whole entire life. But that part of you won't speak to you if you are always busy. So if you are somebody that uses regular coping mechanisms like phone scrolling, or, you do, I don't know, you smoke, you drink, whatever, there are so many coping mechanisms that our parts use. But what I want you to know is, for example, when I started working with 14-year-old me, who I'll call Kelly, Kelly had a huge amount of trauma at 14. Okay, so there was things that happened with my brother at 14, and as a result of something that happened between myself and my brother, I then started self-harming for 2.5 years before I was sectioned for 3 weeks in 1996. But that version of me is still stuck there. And I tried everything I could to possibly work with Kelly. But until I actually let my whole world fall silent and I really started spending time with her. And this is what the silent parts of you need. Okay, so if you've had extreme amount of trauma, let's say you lost your mum, or you lost your dad, or you had an accident, or yes, you may have experienced sexual abuse or something like that. Okay, but again, if you had that amount of trauma, there will be a part of you stuck in that moment in time. Does that resonate with you any here? Just pop in the comments here if you're like, oh my God, yeah, I had massive trauma at 12, 13, 14. And the biggest bit I want you to understand from working with this silent part is you don't need to remember the trauma. I truly believe in my inner me coaching that you don't have to go back to those times. It's one of the biggest myths. And for me, that's why talking therapy, I feel genuinely, honestly, it's got its place, but it often re traumatizes us. When you work with me, what I do is I help you locate the story you're telling yourself today in the 3D reality, and I help you understand what do you need to do to remap your system. What do you need to do to be able to talk to these parts of you, silent or, whether they can speak, in order to make them to feel safe so that you can do the number one thing in parts work, which is unburden them. Unburden them means listening. And when it came to working with silent 14-year-old me, I showed up every single day, and I want you to do that. If you have a silent part of you, okay, I have a great process again that I teach people on how to find these silent parts of you. And what that does for me is I was able to clearly see 14-year-old me in my head. And what I did was I started going, hey, Kelly. And that part doesn't ever speak to you, okay? And I was like, Kelly, are you there? And I could feel that part of me front. Okay. And because I have DID and it used to take over me, a great example of how a part is taking over you that I also want to share here. For me, my right eye flickers. Okay. So when my right eye is flickering or clicking, that is a part of me trying to front me. Okay. The other way a part is trying to take hold of you is you go all cold all over. And you will literally shiver. You will literally go, whoa. How many of you have done that? Because when you do whoa, a part of you has taken over you from my perspective. And that's why all of a sudden you'll be completely different. You might text someone and say F off or whatever and be very reactive. And then all of a sudden you'll go, oh, and you come back to normal. But when it came to working with this silent part of me, Kelly again, 14-year-old me, I just kept turning up every single day, and I turned up multiple times. And I've made other videos about how I learned to work with my inner teen Nick. Nick is 17-year-old me who had extreme trauma too at 17. And all I did to get Kelly talking to me was I went every single day and I saw her multiple times. And it took about 3 weeks, 2, maybe 3. What do you think, Bex? Yeah, 2, maybe 3, something like that. It's all right, love. I'll introduce you to my enemy family in another video because Claude AI thinks it would be great for you guys to actually meet all my parts. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you'd love to meet all my parts, because I'd love to actually share with you how I work with all of my parts incredibly well, considering I have DID and I've got great self-energy. As you can see, I'm smiling and really happy in this video. But genuinely, honestly, that's all I did. I literally showed up and I made her feel safe. But I got left loads of group chats. I basically became me, her, and my family. And what I also did, and I'll make a separate video on this for you as well, is I understood that Kelly was working with other parts of me. So Kelly was part of what I call a 5-part family, because your parts also work in teams. Does that make sense to any of you? Okay, if we look at binge eating, and again, a separate video I'll make for you. And like I say, it would be ideal if you subscribed here. If you really are going, oh my God, Kel, like you make it sound so easy, this girl gets parts, subscribe right here. Okay, because I get it. And my videos are educational. They are to help you out of all this stuck trauma. I'm not saying inner me family is the only way to do it, but I'm saying I know it because I live with it and I understand it. Therefore, I can help you be able to talk to those parts. But when Kelly did eventually speak to me, okay, what I got back from her was kind of like this. Kelly, you there? You can. Okay, my name is Kel. I'm 46 years of age. Can I help you? Can I support you? What do you want? Are you okay? No. Do you want to talk to me? No. Are you okay with me holding space for you right now? Yeah. Is there anything you need from me? No. And that's how silent parts of you start to talk to yourself from my perspective in the beginning. So, like I say, just to end here on how you work with silent parts, you have two different versions. You have the non-verbal one, which I've shared with you today, and you also have the ones that they just had a huge amount of trauma. And also, I just want to add here, like, if you ever lost anybody, you lost your husband, you lost your wife, it's possible that part of you is trapped in the moment in time, but they don't feel safe. And specifically, if you are someone that has a dysregulated nervous system, I'm making a separate video for that as well on you on dysregulated nervous system. If you have a dysregulated nervous system, it's very unlikely that these silent parts will come forward and be able to speak to you until you start to regulate it. Okay? Because ultimately, I want you to know that your family, your own inner family, which again you all have, I want you to know that those parts of you, their job, their function, keep your system running. Keep whatever your name is going. And you'll only start to be able to control the why you have certain rage or why you do certain things when you really start to work with these silent parts of yourself. Anyway, for me, that's how you do silent parts and stuff. If you'd love to come and do a session with me, my details are just below here on the description. A great place for me that I started genuinely, honestly, was with my inner child. That's why I created the Inner Child Reset. All of my courses are from my own personal experience. They are from how I learned to work with my own inner boy, how I learned to work with my own inner child. And if you're unsure which is right for you, or you want to have a bit more of a chat with me, come and have a 15-minute free chat. I've got 2 slots every single day, or even better still, I have an incredible school community full of a ton of people. And that's where I hang out in that space. And I share books, I share videos, I share all kinds of stuff, because ultimately, I believe, as someone who has DID, but that I'm fully in charge of my whole system, that I am somebody that is actually qualified and trained to be able to help you, because I'm a registered childhood trauma practitioner with the CMA. Anyway, I hope you got a lot from this video. Let me know here, just to end, which points you think really landed, which points nailed it. And if you look just up there, there is a whole playlist of other videos around how to work with your inner child and how to work with other parts of you. I hope this helped. Cheers, take care, ta-da, bye-bye.